Rented the lake house for everyone. 5 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, a dock with 2 kayaks, and enough kitchen space to cook a real Christmas dinner for 12 people. I put down the deposit myself, $2,400, back in September before the leaves even started turning. I wanted it to be perfect. That's the thing about me. I always want everything to be perfect for people who don't deserve it. My mother-in-law called it a generous gesture. My sister-in-law called it so thoughtful of you. My husband's brother just texted a thumbs-up emoji and never said another word about it until he needed to know the check-in time. I'm a nurse. I work 4 12-hour shifts a week, sometimes 5 when we're short-staffed, which is always. I've been doing it for 6 years. I don't say that to brag. I say it because I want you to understand that when I saved up for that lake house, I did it in between double shifts and grabbing 4 hours of sleep on a hospital break room couch. Every dollar meant something. My husband and I have 2 kids, a 7-year-old boy named Eli and a 4-year-old girl named June. They had never been to a lake house. Eli had been asking about a cabin with a real fireplace since he saw one in a Christmas movie last year. When I booked a place and showed him the photos, he said, "Mom, is that ours?" And I said, "For Christmas, baby, yeah." The look on his face is something I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life. And not in the way I originally planned. My mother-in-law lives 40 minutes from us. My husband's younger sister, I'll call her my sister-in-law, lives in the same neighborhood as her mom, basically. They're close in the way that feels normal from the outside, but suffocating once you're actually inside it. Every major decision my husband makes gets run by his mother first. Every holiday plan gets negotiated through her. I learned this the hard way about 3 years into our marriage, when I planned a trip to visit my own parents over Thanksgiving and somehow ended up apologizing for it. The lake house Christmas was supposed to be different. It was my idea, my money, my planning. I spent weeks on it. I made a shared Google Doc with room assignments, a grocery list, a packing checklist. I emailed everyone the check-in instructions and the house rules. I was so proud of it. I remember sitting at my kitchen table at 11 at night after the kids were in bed, going over the meal plan one more time, thinking, this is going to be the Christmas they all talk about for years. 2 weeks before Christmas, my sister-in-law called me. "Hey, so I wanted to talk to you before I talk to anyone else," she said. She always says things like that, before I talk to anyone else. Like, she's doing you a favor by ambushing you first. "What's up?" I said. "So, I've been thinking about the Christmas thing, and honestly, the lake house is a little far for Mom. You know her knees have been bad. And driving in December weather on those mountain roads?" She trailed off. I waited. I was thinking maybe we do it here instead, at Mom's house. She has plenty of space, and honestly, it's just easier. I told her that was a nice idea for a different year. But I'd already paid the deposit and the balance, and the kids were really excited, and everyone had confirmed they were coming. She got quiet in that specific way that means she's not actually done. "I hear you," she said. "I just think it would mean a lot to Mom to host. She doesn't get to do that anymore since Dad passed. It's been really hard on her. My father-in-law passed 2 years ago. I loved him genuinely. He was a kind, quiet man who used to slip $20 bills into the kids' coat pockets when we weren't looking. His death was hard on everyone. I was not going to weaponize it, but apparently that option was available to others." "The deposit is non-refundable," I said. "I'd lose the full $2,400. "Well, I mean, we could all chip in to cover that. You want me to cancel the trip I planned and paid for so your mom can host Christmas at her house, and your solution is that everyone chips in to pay me back for the cancellation fee." "It's just an idea," she said. "Breezy as anything." I told her I'd think about it. I didn't think about it. I confirmed the booking and sent a reminder email to everyone with the final arrival details. 3 days later, my mother-in-law called my husband. I wasn't in the room, but I heard his end of the conversation. The long silences, the "I understand, Mom," the "let me talk to her." When he came into the kitchen, he had the look. The one where he's already decided but needs me to feel like we're making the decision together. "She's really upset," he said. "I know. She just wants to feel included. She's included. She's one of 12 people I invited to a lake house I paid for. She has her own room with an ensuite bathroom." "It's not about the room, it's about control," I said. "It's about control." He didn't disagree. He just asked me to think about what was more important, the trip or keeping the peace. I told him those 2 things weren't mutually exclusive until someone made them that way. We went back and forth for a week. A whole week of quiet tension, of conversations that started normal and ended sideways. My sister-in-law texted me twice more, once to ask if I'd given any more thought to the plan, and once to forward me a link to a cozy restaurant near my mother-in-law's house that does a lovely Christmas dinner if we wanted to simplify things. And then one evening, I put Eli and June to bed, and I came downstairs and I found my husband on the phone with his mother again. He was standing in the back hallway, voice low, and when he heard me come down the stairs, he turned slightly away. I went into the kitchen and stood there for a minute. Then I got my laptop and pulled up the booking. I checked the cancellation policy one more time. Full payment forfeited inside 30 days of arrival. I had already known this. I just needed to sit with it for a moment. My husband came in about 10 minutes later. "She's pretty hurt," he said. "Is she? I think maybe we should just... Did you tell her what I paid? She knows, and she's still asking us to cancel." He didn't answer. I closed the laptop. "Okay," I said. "I need you to tell me something honestly, not as someone who's trying to keep the peace. Honestly. Not as someone who's trying to keep the peace. Honestly. Do you think it's reasonable for her to ask us to forfeit $2,400 we can't get back, cancel a trip the kids are excited about, and spend Christmas in her house instead? Because her knees are bad and she misses your dad." He looked at the floor. "When you put it like that, that's what it is. That's just what it is." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't have to fix it," I said. "I'm going." I told him the kids were going. I told him he was welcome to join us. He said he needed time to think. That night I lay awake for a long time. I thought about all of it, the deposit, the Google Doc, the room assignments, Eli's face when he saw the photos. I thought about 6 years of navigating this family, of shrinking my own plans and preferences to make room for theirs. I thought about the Christmas before last, when I worked Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and still drove an hour to my mother-in-law's on the 26th with homemade cookies I'd baked at midnight because I didn't want her to feel forgotten. I don't know exactly when I made the decision. I think I'd been making it for a long time without realizing it. The next morning, I called the property management company, not to cancel, to add a note to the reservation that only I would be authorizing any changes. Then I called my own parents and invited them to join us. My mom cried a little. She said they hadn't been invited to a family Christmas in 4 years. Then I sat down and thought about the money. The lake house was mine, but there were other things. For the past 2 years, I had been quietly covering things I probably shouldn't have been. My mother-in-law's car needed a repair in the spring, a $900 transmission issue. My husband mentioned it in passing. I offered to help, he said, just this once, and I wrote the check. My sister-in-law was short on rent the following fall, not by much, a few $100s, and I transferred it without making it a thing. There was a birthday dinner at a nice restaurant that I organized and paid for because no one else stepped up. There was a graduation gift for my husband's cousin that came from our joint account, which means it came half from me without anyone asking. None of these things were huge on their own, but they added up. And more importantly, they had created a precedent. The idea that I would contribute financially to this family without hesitation, without needing to be asked twice, without expecting anything in return. Which, fine, that's who I am. But it had also created the assumption that my contributions were unconditional, that they would continue no matter how I was treated, that there was no connection between how I was valued and what I gave. I thought about that for a while. Then I did something I had never done before. I opened a spreadsheet and wrote down every financial contribution I had made to my husband's family over the past 2 years that came directly from my income. Not joint expenses, mine. The car repair, the rent, the dinners, the gifts. A few other things I'd half forgotten. It came to just over $3,800. I didn't do anything with that number right away. I just let it sit there. My husband came home that evening and told me he'd talked to his mom again and he thought we should try to find a compromise. I asked him what compromise looked like to him. He said maybe we do the lake house for a shorter stay and then spend the last couple of days at his mom's. I told him that wasn't a compromise. That was a consolation prize for everyone. We'd lose part of the trip and still not give his mom what she actually wanted, which was to be in charge. He said I was being unfair. I said I was being accurate. We slept in the same bed that night and barely spoke. The next morning he left early for work. I made the kids breakfast, dropped them at school, and went to work my own shift. And somewhere between the drive home and sitting down to eat something at 9 in the evening, I checked my phone and found a group text. My sister-in-law had created a group chat, me, my husband, my mother-in-law, and my husband's brother, and sent a message that said, "I think we all need to be honest about the Christmas situation. Mom has been really struggling, and I don't think it's fair that one person's preferences are overriding everyone else's feelings. Some of us feel like we've been excluded from the decision-making process, and it's putting a strain on the whole family." My mother-in-law replied within 2 minutes, "I just want us to be together. I don't ask for much." My husband's brother sent a thumbs up emoji. To which message, I still don't know. I stared at my phone for a long time. One person's preferences. I was the one who found the house, compared 15 options, handled all the logistics, paid the full cost, and arranged everything down to the grocery list, and the problem was my preferences. I put my phone down. I ate my food. I watched a show I don't even remember. And then I picked up my phone again and did what I should have done 2 years ago. I texted my mother-in-law directly. I've been the one covering costs for this family for a while now. The car repair, the rent, the dinners. I've never made it a condition of anything. But I'm realizing now that you and sister-in-law feel comfortable asking me to sacrifice a trip I planned and paid for while also not acknowledging what I've contributed. I'm not doing that anymore. I left the group chat. Then I transferred the balance of what I calculated as mine, the $3,800 in personal contributions, from the joint account back into my individual savings account, the one that's just mine, that I've had since before I was married. I want to be clear, I did not do this sneakily. I told my husband that evening. I told him exactly what I'd moved and why and what my logic was. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I think I'd let things go too far." It was the most honest thing he'd said to me in weeks. He did not call his mother. He did not try to reverse the transfer. He went to bed, and I think he lay awake for a while, and in the morning he came downstairs and said, "I'm coming to the lake house." We went. My parents drove up Christmas Eve afternoon. My dad helped Eli carry firewood in from the woodpile, and they built a fire together that Eli talked about for the entire rest of the trip. My mom and I cooked together. Real food, not catered, not restaurant food. Just the two of us in a big kitchen with Christmas music playing and flour on the counter. June wore a red velvet dress that she picked out herself and refused to take off for 2 days. My husband was quiet for the first day. Watchful, I think. Processing. But by Christmas morning, he was okay. More than okay. He sat on the dock in the cold with my dad and they talked for almost an hour, which is something they had never really done before. We didn't hear from his family. My sister-in-law sent a brief text on Christmas Day that said, "Merry Christmas." My mother-in-law sent nothing. I didn't fill the silence. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't reach out to smooth something over, to check in, to make sure everyone was okay. I let it be quiet. On the last night, after the kids were in bed, my husband and I sat on the porch with blankets and the leftover wine, and he said, "I'm sorry." Not a general sorry. Not an "I'm sorry things got complicated." He said, "I'm sorry I made you feel like your effort didn't count. I'm sorry I kept trying to fix the wrong thing." I didn't say it was okay because it wasn't, not entirely. But I said, "Thank you. That means something." We talked for a long time. About patterns we'd both let settle in. About what the next year needed to look like. About the fact that I'd been functioning as an ATM with feelings for a family that had started treating the two as unrelated. Some things we said were hard. Some things were overdue. The fire inside had gone to embers by the time we went back in. I don't know exactly where things stand with my mother-in-law now. We'd had one conversation since Christmas, brief, polite, unresolved. My sister-in-law has not texted me since the group chat. That silence used to be something I would have scrambled to fix. I would have sent a message, made a gesture, smoothed it over, pretended the whole thing never happened so we could all go back to the comfortable arrangement where I gave and they received and nobody examined any of it too closely. I didn't do that this time. What I did do, I booked the same lake house for next Christmas. Same deposit. Just me, my husband, my kids, and my parents. I didn't tell anyone else until after the booking was confirmed. Eli asked me last week if we could do the cabin again next year. I said yes. He said, "With the fireplace in the dock and Grandma and Grandpa?" I said yes to all three. He said, "That was the best Christmas." It was. It really was. And it cost me exactly what it was worth. I used to think that generosity was its own reward. That if you gave enough, quietly enough, without keeping score, The people around you would eventually see it and treat you accordingly. I believed that for a long time. I operated on that belief for 6 years of marriage, 2 kids, and more late-night transfers than I want to count. What I know now is that generosity without boundaries doesn't teach people to value you. It teaches them that you are available, that your effort is a given, that your money will show up regardless of how you're spoken to, regardless of whether you're included, regardless of whether anyone says thank you. I wasn't being generous, I was being managed, and I was so busy making everything smooth for everyone else that I didn't notice. The $900 car repair wasn't the problem. Neither was the rent or the birthday dinner or the graduation gift. The problem was the pattern, that I had become someone whose contributions were taken as automatic and whose preferences were treated as optional. When my sister-in-law created that group chat, when my mother-in-law sent nothing on Christmas Day, I think some part of them genuinely believed I would fold. That I would cancel my plans, absorb the loss, show a better house with a smile, and by New Year's, we'd all be back to normal. The normal where I give and nobody asks. The thing about allowing that dynamic to exist for years is that eventually you have to be the one to end it, because the people benefiting from it never will. My husband said, I think I've let things go too far. That was honest. But the truth is, I let it go too far too. Every time I covered something without saying anything. Every time I rearranged my plans to keep the peace. Every time I told myself it wasn't worth the argument. Those weren't acts of grace. They were deposits into an account that only ever got withdrawn from. What finally changed things wasn't anger. I wasn't screaming or dramatic about any of it. I just got quiet and clear. I moved the money. I left the group chat. I called my parents. And then I went to the lake house and watched my dad teach Eli how to stack firewood, and I thought this is what I was protecting. Not the deposit, not the principal. This specific thing, right here. Eli told me it was the best Christmas. He's 7. He doesn't know anything about the group chat, or the transfer, or the conversation on the porch. He just knows that he built a fire with his grandpa and raised his sister at the dinner table and wore his pajamas until noon. That's the whole world to him right now, and I kept that world intact. That matters to me more than anything my mother-in-law thinks about how I handled it. I'm not pretending everything is resolved. It isn't. But I've learned that resolution isn't always the goal. Sometimes the goal is just to stop participating in something that's costing you more than it's worth. You don't have to blow anything up. You just have to stop funding it.